Hello. Let me put the comments on the stage. Welcome, everybody. It is, what is today? June 26th, 2026, 6/26, 26. What does that mean, numerologists? We can add it all together, right? We got 8 plus 8, that's 16 plus 2, that's 20, that's a 2. What's a 2? Hello, Shreveport. Let's see who's here. Let me know where you're from. Hawthorne, California, Wisconsin in the house, Illinois, Detroit. Yeah, we're starting, so I usually go live on Thursday, but I had some family business to take care of. And so we're doing a Friday night one. And I figured I'd do it a little later since, it's Friday night. So East Coast won't mind staying up a little later. It's better for the West Coast to start at 5. Ontario, Canada, Michigan, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Holt, Michigan. And then, I realized kind of late today that I hadn't done the StreamYard. So you didn't get the announcement till like 15 minutes ago. So that's, some people don't know yet that we're here. But we got 80 people in the room already, so that's good. Hello, Phoenix. We got New Hampshire in the house, Albuquerque, Massachusetts, Bay Area, used to be from Michigan, Nova Scotia, Southeast Washington. Hello, everybody. Good to have you here. I'm not at home. I'm away from home again, dealing with the family crisis. Yeah, it's ongoing. We make progress and then we have some setbacks and, but everybody, I really appreciate all the prayers and all the healing that people are sending. It's all helping. So Liz says, we got a numerologist in the group. Here we go. Liz Isan says, harmony, partnership, and emotional intelligence. I guess that's the theme for today since we got the 26, 26, 6, 26. Did I do it right? Oh, I did it wrong, didn't I? 26266, not 26262. Did I do it right? 26, that's 8 plus 26 is 8. That's 16 plus 6. See, I did it wrong. But that's still 22, isn't it? Well, that could be a 4, which is stability. All right. I hate to miss my Thursday live chat. So I said, I'm going to do it on Friday. Better late than never, right? Welcome, everybody. We got 100 in the room. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about current affairs as per usual, and then I'll be taking some questions. We got Chula Land south of San Diego. Oh, Long Beach in the house. Whoop, whoop. Appreciates the later time. I often do go back and forth between 4 and 5 so that it's better for West Coast when we do 5. It's better for East Coast when we do 4. And then the middle of the country, I think they're okay with either time. But yeah, it's hard to keep everyone happy, right? All right, Vesti's in the house. It's so funny when people say that. All right, so let me start with a little bit of Metatron, not the news. Oh, this is sweet. Okay, look at Rita Rader. I had a choice of 3. I picked you to watch at this time. You win. Yes, I win. Thank you, Rita Rader. Thank you for letting me win. Yeah, because I think Susan Lynn does a Friday night thing. So normally I don't like to, I'm not trying to schedule at the same time as anyone else, but it is what it is. I couldn't do it yesterday, so we're doing it today. So yeah, people gotta pick now, I guess. I don't know what time hers is, so I don't know if it's right now or if it's later. I feel like it's later. But I guess that might affect how many people come. Who knows? Yeah, but glad you brought that up. Yeah, I was just saying I rescheduled. Instead of doing Thursday chit and chat, I decided to do it Friday. And no, it wasn't because of my new class, but I do have a new class, so I'm glad you brought it up, Orias. I just started a new class on Thursday. It's on the Shift Network, and it's called Integrative Medical Intuition. I'm really excited about it because it's on the same topic as the book I'm writing, which is like, talking about medical intuition as medical, as integrative medicine. Like, how can medical intuition work with other fields like biomedicine, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine? How can we help clients navigate, different modalities as medical intuitives who are helping them to figure out their medical mysteries? So that's a new course I just started. It started on Thursday. It's live, it's Zoom with live lectures and Q&A and breakout groups where you can work with other students. And it's 7 weeks. It started on Thursday, but you can still join because everything is recorded. So you can just watch the recording of the class you missed. Oh yeah, this is my sister's. I'm at my sister's. See, and she's got this Madam President bag from some event we went to. I said, I got to have that in my background. Oh, I didn't know that. Right. Hogarth has forgot about, he has a Friday fry up. Yeah. So usually I don't want to interfere with other people's, I don't want to, have people have to choose, but it's just that today I just couldn't do it yesterday. So, so thank you for being here. You have lots of options. So let's start with some of the Metatron Not the News. I haven't posted as much lately because I've been so busy with this new class, but I have been paying attention. And so I do have some notes for our Metatron Not the News. So first I wanted to share some news about the persistence. North Carolina. All right. Baltimore. Greetings. Okay, so we have our governor in Illinois just signed a bill protecting the medical records of people who get, can I say that word? There's so many words we can't say in our not so free country. We gotta laugh. Right? Otherwise we'd be crying. I used to have a code name for this and now I forgot it. But termination. If you get a termination, if you're a woman and you get a termination, they're protecting those medical records because the flashy head clown is trying to get into everyone's business and violate HIPAA and find out who's terminating, and so they can try to control women's bodies, but it's not going to happen, at least not in Illinois. So this, the persistence takes a lot of different forms. I just want to point that out. There are governors, there are lawmakers, there are mayors like Mamdani, there are individuals, there are organizations. There's just so many ways, right, to persist. There are, judges. So in another act of persistence, the head clown had a case where he was trying to challenge New Jersey's sanctuary cities, and he lost that. It was actually it turned out of court. It was like thrown out of court. His efforts to challenge the sanctuary cities. So go New Jersey. And then in Massachusetts, they passed a law safeguarding libraries from book bans. So again, there's so many ways to persist, right? Whether it's state law, judges, governors, librarians, teachers, individuals, right? Okay, and then we have some good news, some good not the news about the files of EPI. So you may have heard this already. I think it happened yesterday that the Department of Injustice has been ordered to unredact the files that it redacted. And it's not as straightforward as that when I read down into the articles, because apparently it says you have to unredact all these files, or it gives them a little way out, or you have to justify your redactions using the law, using the Transparency Act. So the Transparency Act, when it first came out, it specified in great detail the circumstances under which files could be redacted. And it was very detailed because the congressional body that wrote the law, they were like, we know, right? We know how illegal, how, what's the right word? Lawless this circus is. So we have to make sure we stipulate everything they can and cannot do. Otherwise, they'll try to do something. And so they made really clear ground rules for if you want to redact anything in this file, it has to be for the following reasons. And not only does it have to be for the following reasons, but you have to then give us a memo giving your reason for every single redaction in the file. So they were supposed to provide an explanation according to the rules for every single redaction, which of course they didn't do. So this judge says, everything has to be unredacted unless you can follow the Transparency Act and actually provide a justification according to the act. Only those certain things are justified. So this is good progress. I mean, I know it's not enough. I know we're frustrated because it's like they're breaking the law. They've been breaking the law for a long time. Why isn't anything being done? It's like we just live in such a lawless place now, and it's something that most of us couldn't have imagined 18 months ago, that we would have a governing body that just disregarded the law. This isn't something that we've ever experienced in quite this way, right? I mean, yes, we've had presidents who have done things they shouldn't have done, like started wars without getting congressional approval. That has happened before. Things have been done, but not like this, just absolute disregard for the law, right? So one law that they've been absolutely disregarding is the Transparency Act of EPI, right? So what's great about this ruling too is that it was the result of a lawsuit that was brought by a journalist, Katie Fong, and she brought this lawsuit against Todd Blanche. And again, this is just another example of persistence, right? That, even individual journalists are like, oh, you're going to try to censor the press. You're going to try to keep us muzzled. You're not going to let us get the news. Okay, I'll file a lawsuit, right? Like people are being creative. People are adapting. People are like, I'm a member of the persistence. What can I do? And Katie Fong was like, I can file a lawsuit. And she did it. And it worked. So, we all have something that we can do, right? Thank you for the gift, Moon Beanification. Thank you, JLV. Thanks for the gift. I appreciate it. All right. What else? I got more. Not the news. Let's talk about Starboy. All right. Let's briefly talk about Starboy. Some more good news. No longer trillion gazillion air, right? And his company, X marks the spot where space used to be, and now it's just trash floating around our planet. They lost a whole lot of valuations. They lost 34% of their value. The stocks lost 34%, which is major. Like if anyone here dabbles in the stocks, what is it called? Stock exchange. If you dabble in that, you will know. It's very, very dramatic for a stock to lose 34% in like 2-3 days, right? That's huge. That's a lot of money that a lot of people lost in a few days. And it wasn't just his X marks the spot stocks. It was also his Tesla stocks that fell. And why is this good news? I think it's good news for a couple of reasons. One, because dude's nefarious, right? We know that he was the one that finagled the contest, right? So he's a part of the, the 7 thieves that helped bring the circus to town. He's one of the main thieves. And so that's why it's good news. But also it's good news because it speaks to the future viability of, can I say that? AI. What did I used to call them? Well, I can't remember. The robots. So there's been this talk of a bubble, right? The popping of a bubble with regard to the robots. And this suggests that that is true. I said this a while ago that I think it's going to pop, and that also that it's just not going to be as successful and widespread as certain people are predicting. And we are seeing evidence of that, right? Not only in the way that the X marks the spot stocks are falling, but also we're finding out also in the last week or two that a lot of companies are getting rid of their AI because they've discovered that, oh, lo and behold, people are actually better at doing things than the robots. The robots just make far too many mistakes, and it's turned out to be not cost effective. So excuse me, I always sneeze in threes. So a lot of us are worried, right? We're worried about the environmental impact of these centers of data and these the proliferation of these robot programs, and so anything that we see that suggests that, hey, maybe it's not going to be as successful as people thought is a good thing. And we're seeing. Thank you for all the blessings. We're seeing all these signs, right? The stock's going down. I think Microsoft got rid of their AI. We have reports coming out that a lot of companies are getting rid of it. We found out that 50% of the centers of data that were planned were delayed or canceled. So we're seeing a lot of signs that this big plan to turn everything into robotic isn't going to happen, and to destroy our environment, that this isn't going to happen. Right. So that's why it's good news. Let's see what you're saying in the comments. Thank you for all the blessings. I used to joke. I sneeze a lot. I used to sneeze a lot because I have allergies. And I used to joke to my friends, oh, I just do it for the blessings. Because isn't it nice that every time you sneeze, you get blessings? I mean, okay. Oh, yes. People are in the comments also talking about just a lot of the damage that Starboy has done, why it's good news when he's not doing great. So Gay Cryptid Hours is reminding us of the impact that his decision with the dodgy dodgy program he created that then cut USAID, and how that has unalived so many people already, and many more are expected to lose their lives. Oh, and so someone else is pointing out, well, she's a journalist, but she's also a brilliant lawyer, right? So she knew what she was doing. And it's really interesting, I think, too, just how many women are at the forefront of the persistence when it comes to the files. And I'm very proud of all the women who are just, doing all the work. Thank you for becoming a member, Susie Q V1U. Oh, my coffee thing. You're right. I didn't put my coffee thing up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got some flack. Where are the comments? Uh-oh. I got some flack. Somebody was complaining, oh, you're promoting your book too much. Oh, all these creators are asking for too much. And everything I've done, I've been asked to do. It's funny. My followers, because I didn't even know about these things. My followers told me about Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. I didn't even know about it. And my followers told me about Patreon. My followers told me about making a wish list, all those things. I listened. Some people didn't like it. Okay, let's see if I got through all the not the news, and then I'll answer some questions. Oh, somebody gifted that membership. So thank you to whoever who gifted. Was it Susie Q also that gifted a membership? Thank you. All right, let's see. I had a little bit more news having to do with the Red Hats. They're not doing so well. So we got a red-hatted judge who ruled that the head clown's cuts to the National Institutes of Health are void and illegal. So that was really good news. There were also some reports out there saying that Mikey with the Little Johnson is scared. He's really afraid of the terms of mid, and he's trying to like rile people up by talking about how if the terms of mid go the way they look like they're going to go, there's going to be all these investigations against all of them, because why not? They're all criminals. I mean, this is what happens. You commit crimes, yeah, do the time. So he's all scared. And I'm feeling a lot more hopeful about the terms of mid, because the last time I tuned in, I saw all of these people locking arms and uniting to protect the terms of mid. And that was a shift from what I had been seeing for a while. I kept saying that I didn't think they were going to happen because something else was going to happen first. Something bigger was going to happen before November. And now I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about the state of the terms of mid, but I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful about them. And so then another red hat, Couchman, assistant head clown, apparently was holding forth about how much he admired Nixon and how Watergate was not even worth talking about. It wasn't really, newsworthy. And, this is how flashy people, flash is one of my code words, flashists, right? Flashists. This is what they do. They try to normalize illegal behavior. They try to normalize authoritarianism to try to prep you for what they're planning. And so this is one of the things that they do. Oh, yeah. Oh, that guy, Smittler, he wasn't that bad. Oh, that guy, Nixon, he wasn't that bad, right? They start telling you that people who've done really bad things in the past are not really as bad as we've been told they are. And they're doing that to kind of soften the ground so that they can then do worse things, right? So he kind of subtly suggested, according to Aaron Parnas, that was his interpretation, that that their administration is doing things that are worse than Watergate every single day. Of course, we all know that, but it's kind of a trip for him to be kind of bragging about it or, alluding to it. There was some other good news, not the news. This is for entertainment purposes only, by the way. There was some other good not news having to do with the head clown giving some kind of speech at some kind of fair that was originally supposed to be some fair that was for everyone, bipartisan and celebrating the country, but turned into a, Magatonian fair. Well, apparently it wasn't very popular and people were just all walking out in droves. And then he had to go on his Untruth Social and lie about it and say, it was my biggest crowd ever, biggest crowd. Whenever he starts talking about crowd size, that's how you know it was a failure. Because you know what? You know who doesn't ever talk about crowd size? People who are actually popular and actually have big crowds. They never, ever have to talk about their crowd size. And I wanted to share this good news I heard. That there's a giraffe on the loose in Texas. I think that's very exciting. Okay, so that's my not the news. So let me check out the comments and see what people are saying. Yeah, it's really sad about Venezuela. I haven't seen the details, but I've seen that a lot of people have lost their lives. Hello, Vancouver Island. We got Sister Canada in the house. Oh, somebody called. Are you referring to Couchman? Native name breathes through cushions. Ring of Fire. I don't know what Ring of Fire is, so I haven't been really that up to date on news because I've been really busy trying to catch up with work. So I don't know anything about that. So I'm just looking to see what kind of questions are in the chat because I'm going to answer some questions. Um, oh, and somebody brought the book. Thank you for buying my book. um, okay. So I'm just looking in the comments, looking for questions. Um, got someone from Tulsa here. Yeah, women are leading the charge. Um, oh, here's Susie Q. So Susie Q gifted a membership and also became a member. Um, all right. Here's a question. Um, how does quantum computing figure into all of this? And thank you for the blessing. So, for those who don't know, my first career was in physics. I did my bachelor's degree in physics at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. Loved that college. Um, and I actually did physics and philosophy, but I just loved physics. And I really started out in a quantum mechanics class. And so back then, people weren't talking about quantum computing. But of course, it's really fascinating to me. And so I haven't kept up on the literature on quantum computing. I just remember hearing people talking about when it's finally invented, how it's going to revolutionize everything because it's going to allow calculations. It's going to allow the speed of computing to change by orders of magnitude. And that's how speed does change, right? With computers, it's like it's always kind of leaping from one level to another. And quantum computing has the ability to just really change the game when it comes to speed, right? The speed with which computers can make calculations. So how does this figure into all this? I'm not sure what this is in this question. So when you say into all this, let me just tune in and see if I can pick up anything about quantum computing. And I'm not sure what this is, but because mostly we talk about politics here, but we also talk about spirituality. Sometimes we talk about aliens. So let's see. Quantum computing. All right, so I always start working clairvoyantly first, and then I get other information. But just when I'm in the moment like that, it's quickest way for me to get information is to start seeing images and go from there. So that's why I close my eyes, because I like to work as a clairvoyant with my eyes closed. You don't have to. You can work with your eyes open. But because I mostly have used my gifts to help people, I'm usually working with someone. And I have found that people don't really like it when you stare at them and read them. It's much more comfortable if you have your eyes closed and you're not looking at them. And so that's part of the reason. But another reason is if you're an open eye clairvoyant, what that means is that you could just be walking around and then you see stuff. And then that can make it kind of confusing. Like, am I looking at the physical world or am I looking at a vision, right? So I just find close the eyes, then we're clear. Vision, not real world. It's real, but it's not this world, right? 3D. All right. So the first thing I started seeing when I just like tapping into quantum computing is a keyboard, which is kind of funny because, when computers first came out, that's how old I am. I remember, the first personal computers. And I remember working in the computer lab before there were personal computers, and we were all just in there typing away, and the computers were so big they took up the whole room. And so what I'm being shown is this image from my college days, which I have really fond memories of, where I used to go to the computer room. And back then, I was in physics and I was the only girl. Eventually there was one other girl. And then I was also, whenever I did computer stuff or math classes, I was often the only girl in all my classes. And so I was in this computer room, and I used to hang out in the computer room with all the computer nerds, and it was all boys and me. And back then, one of the things I remember I figured out how to do, which I thought was so clever, was I figured out, I don't even know what it was, but it was like a kind of a hack. This was before text messaging. This was before, you couldn't send messages back then between computers, but I figured out a way to send a message. And so somebody would be on their computer, minding their business, doing their program. We were always doing programs, right? We weren't, there was no internet or anything. We were just writing programs for like our science classes or whatever. And somebody would be on there writing their program. And then all of a sudden a message would show up from me. Hey, what you doing? Or whatever. And they didn't know where it came from. It was just this ghost message. And then I did it with, I think, a friend of mine. We would just be busting up laughing because we would have these ghost messages show up. And so I'm being shown that scene from my youth when I used to, I only really played with computers just because I thought they were fun. I wasn't a computer science major. It was just something that, whatever, a little side quest. That's what we call it today, a side quest. My central quest was physics. My side quest was computers. And so I'm seeing those little ghost messages, which, we would call that hacking, but on a really small scale, right? On a really innocuous scale of hacking, just for, giggles, right? And so I'm seeing that, and I feel like I'm seeing that because it's kind of symbolic of where we're at, like what quantum computing is going to feel like to people. So to a regular programmer sitting at their computer, writing a program, having this message just show up out of nowhere was kind of supernatural to them. It was like, how is this even possible that a message could show up in the middle of my program that I'm writing, right? They didn't understand how it could even happen. And so it had this kind of eerie, kind of supernatural ghost-like feeling to it, right? This is like, oh, where did this come from? And so I think I'm seeing that scene because I think that's the kind of impact that quantum computing is going to have on the computer science world, that it's going to feel like something that is impossible, that came out of left field, that's going to kind of cause a paradigm shift in the way people think about computers. And I'm still not sure what this is that the question was referring to, like how is quantum computing going to impact this? So that's how it's going to impact kind of the computing world. It's going to be a paradigm shift, and it's going to be a paradigm shift on the order of, is this supernatural? So like whenever there's been some really new big thing that's happened in science, it kind of had that appearance, right, of the supernatural. But also conversely, a lot of supernatural stuff that scientists don't understand or that mainstream people don't understand eventually is understood with science, right? So like, eventually they put out a study saying, it turns out that trees are talking, right? So now they have all these scientific studies where they're putting electrodes on tree leaves, and then they're discovering that they actually speak in music, and then they're playing the music to people saying, can you believe this oak tree is singing a song? Well, yeah, lots of indigenous people said that. Lots of medicine people said that for centuries, right? Lots of psychics have said that. But to people who don't understand it, it just seems really weird and out of left field. Like there's no way a tree could talk, right? And then eventually science catches up. And so that's another type of paradigm shift, right? In the other direction. And so this is what quantum computing feels like. Like it's going to, it's going to be a paradigm shift for us all in terms of our understanding of computer science. So it's going to be a big kind of shock to computer scientists, but also like the trees talking, it's going to force the people in computer science or in science in general to think more about the supernatural. Because that's one of the things that quantum mechanics has done. When quantum mechanics first started, came on the scene, in the early 20th century, it just sparked a lot of spiritual questions because it really challenged some of our ideas about the nature of reality. Like so Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and the Schrodinger's cat and the double slit experiment, which all brought into question certain assumptions that we made about the nature of reality. Like, does reality exist objectively, or is it something that's a product of our observation, right, of our subjective experience? And, do things exist in the world regardless of us, or do they only exist because of us, right? And so a lot of, and then there was a lot of books that came out that I read when I was in college that were bringing together spirituality and physics. So like the holographic universe, and now I'm forgetting the other ones, Fritjof Capra, and it's funny, I'm forgetting the names of them now, but a bunch of books came out, back in the like 80s and 90s. Alan Wolfe, talking about the spiritual kind of significance of what was going on in physics. And so that's what's coming up for me when I tune into this question of, what about quantum computing? I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to have an impact on our ideas about the nature of reality. It's going to have an impact on the relationship between science and spirituality. And I should look in the comments and see. I'm not sure when you said this, what you were referring to. Where'd my glasses go? But I have an extra pair. Okay. So let me see if there's a clarification in here. Let's see. So I don't know if you were the person who asked the question was asking about like how quantum computing relates to AI or something, or if they were talking about how it relates to our political situation. But that was my answer about how it relates to us. So I hope that was useful. Okay, Dr. Domenico, thank you for your gift. Happy Pride weekend. Woohoo. It's Pride weekend where? It's Pride weekend Pride is all month, but Pride weekend in your city is this weekend. We actually had our Pride in May, and then there was and there was another Pride. There's a lot of Prides anyway, but happy Pride month. Can you ask your guys if they can tell us how the FCC attacking ABC's The View will play out this July? I submitted a complaint to the FCC about how the FCC is censoring ABC along with 16,000 people. I didn't know about that, but thanks for telling us we can write complaints to the FCC. And it's probably something we can just Google, right? How to file a complaint. So how is this going to play out in July? Okay, should I keep that up there? So I see a judge banging a gavel, which usually means to me, not no go. There's going to be an interruption. There's going to be a judicial interruption. There's going to be some type of I don't know if it's an actual judge, or if it's a law, if it's a ruling in a court, but it feels like there's going to be some type of intervention, policy change, something along those lines is going to change. It's going to interrupt it. I'm also seeing a whole lot of people with signs protesting. And so I see a direct connection between this change, this ruling or intervention or policy change, and all of the people speaking out. And so I see this really tall building, which I think is like the headquarters for ABC, the corporate headquarters. And these are like the people who are making business decisions. And they're paying attention to the people complaining. And what I was getting to was, I mean, I've been getting this for quite a while. And so this was brought up in my mind just now as I was tuning into this question. It was, is this idea that, flashyism isn't good for capitalism. Um, people don't really make good money. Not everybody. Some people do, right? We got Starboy making money because he was in charge of the fix. So he's getting his payment, right? So certainly there are certain people, sponsors of the circus, who are making money because they sponsor the circus. But that's the thing. That's how flashyism works. It only benefits a few. It doesn't benefit everyone, or even the majority of people, or even the majority of the billionaire class. And I've been waiting for these companies to get to that point of revelation, but it is coming. Like, there's a certain point at which people will just stop watching your television station if you continue to bow down to the circus, right? There comes a point when people will just tune out and they will no longer spend their money in your direction. And this is happening with different companies, right? Like Target, right? Target, because of the Black boycott, the Black-led boycott, has suffered, millions of dollars in loss. And there's going to become a point in time when, companies realize, oh, this really isn't in our best interest, right? And that's what happened with, was it Jimmy Kimmel, that comedian, where they were trying to take him off the air. They backed down because of the people, because it was going to really hit their bottom line. And so I think this is what's going to happen with The View. The View, my understanding is that they have a huge viewership. And not only do they have a huge viewership, but I think a lot of their viewership, I don't know the stats because I don't, I'm not a TV marketing person, but I think a large portion of their viewership is female, and women in this country are more progressive right now. The resistance has more women in it. The leadership is more women. If you look at the polls of who chose who, it was very gendered, right? And so that has a potential to really backfire for them financially. And so that's what I saw. I saw the corporate types kind of looking down at all the people and deciding, oh, maybe this is going to backfire for us. So that's what I'm seeing with regard to that. I don't know why I lost my good glasses. Got these other ones. All right, let's see what else we got in the chat. Volcanoes. Yeah, a lot of people no longer watch mainstream media, and that's going to keep changing. That's going to keep happening. It's going to, what's the right word? It's going to progress. That movement's going to progress. And it just has to reach that point where it's just financially no longer viable to support the circus. That's what we need to get to that point. Unfortunately, like, wouldn't it be nice if people were just moral beings and they just did the right thing? But no, there are people who all they care about is the bottom line. They're not going to do the right thing unless they accidentally do the right thing because it helps them financially. And that's really a part of how capitalism works. Right? It's kind of baked into the economic system that immoral acts, made by people with the most capital, are not punished. Right? They're not punished. Yeah, people are talking about Pride. Yeah, so Long Beach, they did cancel the event at the end. They didn't cancel the march though. The march still happened, but I missed it because I was out of town. Oh, here's another seer in my audience. Hello, fellow seer. The Tao of Physics. That was the other book I was trying to remember that I read back in college, The Tao of Physics. A lot of books came out talking about the connection between quantum physics and spirituality. And so that's what's going to happen. Okay, I was looking for more questions. Oh, someone's trying to give us information. I think based on my story, I was telling about college when we were hacking into our fellow classmates' computers to be silly. And Kendra's like, there's so many devices that can be accessed remotely by Wi-Fi. Just saying, very easy to data mine cameras, phones, speakers, etc. Just a little FYI from Kendra. Yeah, science took forever to figure out that animals were sentient too, right? So this is what happens. Science eventually catches up to what the seers are saying, right? What a lot of people already know. Like now, have you seen now they're advertising these devices that are supposed to be able to translate dog barks and cat meows? Now, I don't know if they really work. Let me know in the comments if you've ever used one. But the videos they use to advertise them are very persuasive. They'll have this machine and they'll have the person speak to the machine and say, Rover, come over here right now. And then the machine will start barking, translate into barks. And then the dog comes right over, right? Of course, they could have just had like a snack on a string. We don't know. And then, or they'll do things like say, oh, can you roll over? And then the dog will roll over, but they say it in bark. Anyway. And of course they're talking about how dolphins and whales have very complicated language structures. And so this is stuff that, has been known for centuries, but the science is catching up to it. And, this is just kind of a part of our evolution, I think, as human beings. First, we had this long period of time in our history where religion got wedded to war and colonialism and violence, and it became a very oppressive, low vibration thing. And then scientists came along and said, hey, we believe in rationality. We believe in thinking for ourselves and not having some, religious authority tell us how to think. And, so then we had the scientific revolution, right? We had this like people breaking free of this kind of authoritarian religiosity. Now, this is the history of the West, right? But it's because the West has become so powerful and been able to kind of colonize the world and set standards and control oil and coal and, control narratives. It has influenced a lot of other countries, a lot of educational systems. And so while initially it was a good thing that there was this move towards, logic and rationality and asking questions and not following dogma, it went too far, right? And now we're at this point where science has become our religion and you're not supposed to question it. And if anything isn't a part of the scientific paradigm, then we don't think it's real, right? So anything that's, psychic or spiritual or supernatural that scientists haven't taken an interest in is considered, beyond the pale, not worth talking about, not, fake, silly, stupid, crazy, whatever, right? And so now we're starting to evolve past that like ridiculous dichotomy of either it's scientific or it's irrational, right? And so now I feel like we're in this new era where we're starting to, I think quantum mechanics helped with that, but also it's happening right now because of the rise of the dreaming women, the rise of all of these women and some men, but a lot of women developing psychic abilities and going online and, the way that everyone is so interested in online psychics now, and the fact that so many people get their news from psychics now, their news, right? People are leaving the mainstream media because of the censorship, but then they're also leaving it because They want to hear an intuitive perspective. And so we have this shift going on. And I don't think we're going to shift from a focus on empiricism and rationality to just intuition and spirituality. No, we're not going to swing to the other side again. But I think we're going to learn how to combine them. And that's why I'm so interested in medical intuition and in bringing this, scientific and the spiritual together in the school that I'm creating, Metatron's Academy, because I think, as someone who is trained in science, who is trained in logic as a philosopher, and who has also been trained in many forms of intuitive work like mediumship and healing, I think that all of these are equally valid ways of seeing the world and of understanding the world and of kind of making sense of things. And in the vision that I have for the future, we're able to respect these different ways of acquiring knowledge, right? Empirical ways, logical ways, rational ways, intuitive ways. So I think that's where we're headed. Okay. Yes, we all have a piece of the puzzle. Oh, someone's asking about my classes. Well, since you asked, I just started a new class on the Shift Network. So I teach for the Shift Network about twice a year. But then I also have my own classes that I offer on my website. So if you just go to my website, which is drvestmedicalintuitive.com, I'll put it in the chat. I have some courses there that you can take. And these are pre-recorded classes. So it's like courses I created where I did videotapes of myself teaching you different things. And then I have different lessons and exercises, and they're pretty comprehensive courses. I have one on medical intuition, one on auras, one on Akashic records, and I'm always developing new ones. And so you can take classes with me that way. Or if you want to take a class with me live, where it's actually, what's the name for that? Synchronous or something. You can take it with me in the Shift Network. And so I just started a class called Integrative Medical Intuition, and it started Thursday. It's a 7-week course. I give live lectures. There's a live Q&A. There's breakouts where you can work with other students on exercises I give you to develop your gifts. And you can join even though it already started, because all the classes are recorded and you get all the recordings. You get to keep the recordings for life. There's also a little community in the class where you can meet with other students and talk about stuff. And so it's in my link tree in my bio. So if you go to my link tree, it'll take you to a link which will give you more information about it. Yeah, and then I have another class on my website you can take called Strategic Psychic, which Susie Q has taken. Hopefully she's liking it. Yeah, you can take Akashic Records class. I have an Akashic Records class, which is not with medical intuition. That's its own class that you can take. So if you want to learn how to read the Akashic Records. Oh, here's someone here who went to my first class. So Leslie is in my Integrative Medical Intuition class. And according to her, the first one was really good. That's the review. Is there space for your alumni? Who is this Red Silk Goddess? You're one of my alumni. Yes, there is. In fact, I really think the current class is good for people who've already taken my other medical intuition classes, because in this class, I'm focusing on using medical intuition for treatments and for referrals and for modalities and for helping the client figure out what their next steps are working with healthcare professionals. And so it's really good for people who've already done medical intuition, but I'm also going over things in a way that anybody can take it. You don't have to have studied with me before. Okay. Let's see. So I'm just, for people who are just joining, I answer questions intuitively in the moment. And so I'm just kind of looking at, oh, so Red Silk Goddess, you took medical intuition with me in in 19. It wasn't that old in 2024. Yeah, so then you would like the current class because it will build on what you learned. Um, Here's another good review from someone who took my classes. I'm looking for questions in the comments. Um, I'm not just trying to promote my classes, but someone asked. That was one of the questions about my class. Do I offer any scholarships? It's not my platform. It's the Shift Network, and so most of the money goes to them, right? I just get a small percentage, and so they determine scholarships. So you can just apply directly to them, and they do give out scholarships for every course. They're not all full scholarships. Some of them are partial. Some of them are full. Obviously, they can't give if they give out too many. Then I won't make any money either. But there are scholarships. Okay, I'm looking for questions. There's a question about the earthquake. I know I'm not a weather witch, so I don't know. The only thing I've really ever been good at is hurricanes. So I don't know if my mom was good at earthquakes. So I don't know if I tune into the earthquake, if I'm going to get anything. I just feel like that's not one of my strong suits. Um, but I might answer that if I don't see any more questions. I'm not seeing a lot of other questions. Oh yeah, one of my thank you, Blonde Rebel Healer, reminding people to like the live. If you like the live, it helps the algorithm. So, but I think you have to go out, like it, and then come back. Is that right? Is that how it works? It's really hot here today where I am. Like I have a couple fans on, but it's still very hot. Move the fan closer. I cannot feel that fan. Uh-oh, now I unplugged it. Well, that's not good. Okay, let's see if there are other questions. Oh, we got a member for 7 months, Cyber Lucy. Thank you for being a member. What do you guys have to say about if or when disclosure will happen, and what should we expect? Oh, and I just saw a question that I'm really interested in answering. The little people. I do have experience with the little people. So Kendra, I'm gonna get to your question next. Hopefully I'll remember. But let's see. Cyber Lucy, disclosure. Oh yeah. So I just did a post on Disclosure Day, right? And I have talked quite a bit in the past about it. And I am thinking about posting more about disclosure. About in December of 2024, I think it was December, shortly after, or maybe it was January. Anyway, it was somewhere around then. There were a whole lot of star beings who showed up, and they were just kind of surrounding the Earth. And oh, there it goes. And I was really excited because I was like, oh, are we going to have disclosure soon? Because there were so many. And they said that they were here because of the risk of a certain type of war, right? And so every time there's a certain type of risk, there's a risk of a certain type of what I call Newtonian war, they show up because they're not going to let that happen. And so every time, Head Clown and his cronies started talking about using Newtonian weapons, I would get all happy because I'm like, oh, that means the star beings are going to come. So I've been feeling for quite a while that disclosure is imminent. But let me just tune in right now and see if I can get any new information about that. So they're just reminding me to start that, of course, lots of people have been visited. Lots of people have had experiences with ETs. And so in that regard, it's not like they've left us alone. There's a whole lot of people on planet Earth who are well aware of the existence of these beings. But disclosure is really about everyone knowing, right? It being irrefutable, kind of like, okay, it's not just a certain percentage of the population that knows, but like everybody knows. That's what disclosure is about. And so that's really the question, is when is that going to happen? And I do feel like, I did say this in my Disclosure Day post, that I feel like this movie came out because it's imminent. It's meant to prepare us. And also, I consider that movie an activation. It's meant to activate those of us who are experiencers, who have had experiences with ETs, and those who are starseeds. I think that movie is an activation. And that's what I got. And in the comments under that video, I had hundreds of comments, and many, many people reported in the comments that they had felt activated by that movie. So for me, that just confirms what I believe, that it's imminent, right? That the film had to happen in order to kind of help prepare people. Another thing that's happening to prepare us is there is disclosure happening on a limited level right now by governments. So the US government has been releasing UFO files. Brazil has been releasing some, and I think other countries have have recently. But let me tune back in. And it's funny because I'm being shown a calendar, and it's like they're making fun of me. Oh, you want a date? You want a date when we're gonna arrive? Like what's our ETA? Like, when is your plane getting in? We need to know what's the itinerary, and that's what we all want to know, right? What's the itinerary? When are they showing up en masse? So it does feel like there's just going to continue to be kind of more and more revelations about what governments around the world already know. That's going to continue to dribble out on a regular basis in preparation. And I don't like to give dates, because anyone who is a precog knows that we can never know for sure when something's going to happen, because everything's in flux. The future isn't set. Fate isn't a thing, right? We have free will, and things can constantly change, but we can see where things are headed. And so it's funny, because as I tuned in trying to get a sense of, okay, when is this happening? I got July. That's around the corner. And so I kind of doubt it. I'm like, really? Around the corner that quickly? But so I'm going to say that something big, maybe we can expect to get some kind of big bit, some big information is going to come out in July. And so I'm just being kind of reminded to share some things that were already shared with me in the past. So when I talked to them before about when are you going to show up, when are you going to get here, they said that we needed to invite them here because we're a free will planet, and they can't just show up and change our world, right, against our will. And so for a while, if you were following me back when I was doing, TikToks every day, and I was doing lives every day on TikTok, I was doing these meditations every day. And one of the things we were doing was meditating and like calling upon the star being, saying, we want you to come, please come, please come, please save us. So we're kind of moving towards that critical mass, and we've been moving towards that critical mass for a while, where we need to have enough people who believe in it and who are not afraid and who actually want star beings to come. We need to have enough kind of a critical mass of people to where they're going to feel comfortable coming and not scaring us. Like, they don't want us to be terrified. Now, of course, there are some people who want us to be terrified. And so one thing that we have to resist is any type of propaganda that we see that teaches us to be afraid of beings from other star systems. Because fear, when you can make people fearful, then you can control people. And that's the same with the circus, right? They want us to be fearful. And it's not really working. I don't know if you noticed, but the main sentiment in the US is not currently fear, right? People are very joyous about World Cup. People were really joyous about the Obama Center opening. And a lot of psychics are talking about there's been a shift. The energy has changed. We're no longer in as much danger. We're heading in the right direction. And I feel that too. I don't feel the fear. So for for like a whole year after the circus came to town, as an empath, what I was feeling from the general public in the US, just tuning into the people, I was feeling a lot of fear. And so my job was to try to change that, right? My guides wanted to task me with helping people to understand the spiritual significance of the current political situation, in part because they wanted me to move people out of these lower vibrations of fear and anger and into higher vibrations of hope and vision and unity, right? And I feel like we have shifted, and we're continuing to shift in that direction. You cannot control people unless you can keep them fearful. And so we have to resist fear at all costs. We have to really, that has to be really important, that we really focus on not staying in a state of fear. Of course, we're going to be fearful at times, but we can't stay in that state. And the same is true for disclosure. Like, they need to know that we're not going to freak out and lose our minds if little green men show up, right? we need to, like, they want us to have the ET reaction, right? Or the Close Encounters of the Third Kind of reaction. We're just like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, I want to get to know them. Oh, they're people like us too, right? That's the kind of interaction that we need to have. We don't need to have this war of the worlds reaction of, oh, they're coming here to kill and eat us, right? They're going to take over our planet and take all our resources and unalive all of our people, right? A lot of that is projection, because we have a long history of doing that to each other, right? We have a long history of colonization and conquest and war and, graping and stealing each other's resources. And so we project that onto other beings. We say, oh, if anyone ever came to our planet, that's what they would do to us. And that's just basically people's guilty consciences, And it's true. Anytime you have a discussion about oppression, it always kind of goes that way, right? So when women start speaking up for their rights and saying, oh, we're feminists and we don't want to continue to live under patriarchy, what's the first thing that men say? Oh, you hate men, right? And why do they say that? Because it's a projection, right? So patriarchy is based on misogyny, the hatred of women. And so there's this fear that, oh, if the people we're oppressing become the oppressor, if we're no longer able to oppress them, they're going to do the same thing to us, right? And so that's why you have the same type of projections against Black people, against Native people, against people who are colonized in different countries. Oh, they're going to rise up and kill us all off. Never ever happens, right? Like, and some people, maybe it should have, right? Some people were like, maybe it should have. But that's a projection. When you commit atrocious acts against a group, whatever the group is, there's that fear, right? The oppressor always has that fear that if the people they're oppressing were to get free, they might do the same thing to me, right? I remember when I was in graduate school, I had a professor, and he was a palm-colored professor. And this is relevant, I think, to what he said. And it was a course I was taking with him on Latin American history. And he was going over the early history of Latin America, which was all about, the conquistadors going into the Americas and committing genocide against the indigenous population. And then, taking all the gold and forcing them to become Christians and putting them making them slaves and putting them in camps, in missions, right? This was the history of these countries. And he wanted to justify it, I guess because he felt guilty or complicit because of the color of his skin. And so and this was, for context, this was at Howard University. So the student body was all Black, and this is a white teacher. talking to all Black students, and he's trying to justify the conquest. And so he says to us, you know, if the Native Americans had the technology, they would have done the same thing to us. And I remember being shocked and disappointed at this professor for saying that, because there is absolutely nothing in history to suggest that that was true. So, for example, the indigenous people had not committed those same kind of crimes against each other, right? They didn't have a history of colonization and genocide. So there's absolutely no reason to think that if they had access to certain resources, they would have been terrible people, right? But this is how people kind of justify oppression, right? They're like, oh, it's human nature, or if you were in my position, you would do it too. Well, that's what we project onto the star beings. We say, oh, well, if they come here, they're probably going to do to us what we do to populations that we think we're better than, right? If the star beings are more advanced technologically, which obviously they are, if they can come here, because we can't go anywhere. Right? We don't have the capacity to travel far enough to go to a planet that has beings on it. We don't have the capacity technologically. So if they do, they're more advanced than us, right? So then the assumption is, oh, if they're more advanced, they're going to look down on us and then they're going to oppress us. Well, that's really not the nature of how beings behave in the universe. It's just the way that a certain segment of human beings in a certain time period have behaved. It's not universal. It's not human nature. It's not inevitable. It's not the case that we've always been that way or we always will be. No, there was a certain period in our history where, and it's ongoing right now, right? We're still in it, where as human beings, we are heavily involved in these types of violent activities, right? But that's not true of all of history, and it's not true of our future, because we're evolving into something better, right? So we need to get past that kind of fear of the other, and we need to get past kind of projecting onto the other that they're going to harm us because we just think that's like, human nature or the nature of beings, that they like to harm each other. It really isn't. It's kind of like a wrong turn that we've taken as a people. We've taken a wrong turn, but we can get back on the right path. We don't have to stay on this wrong turn. You could always find your way back, right? When you get lost. So I do think that, I have been told that when the star beings come, they're going to introduce free energy, which is going to radically change our entire world, because much of the violence and separation that we currently have on planet Earth is a result of the restriction of basic resources by a minority. Once energy is no longer a commodity that people can control, like once everybody has access to free energy, then those power structures will collapse. And so I am really looking forward to the arrival en masse of star beings for that reason. I'm just looking in the comments for more questions. I'll probably just answer one or two more. Okay, when can we expect, here's a question from Lauren. When can we expect the restructuring of the systems here in the US, like healthcare, food, etc.? Well, as soon as the circus leaves town, we are going to have a completely restructured government. And all of those things are going to change. So kind of a recap of what I've been saying for the last year and a half, is that we're in a period of revelation. And the purpose of Head Clown, the purpose of the circus, was to be kind of an instrument of revelation. And the way that they're doing that is through destruction. So they came in and they're destroying a lot of our institutions, a lot of our systems. And it's very destructive. But what my guides, have said from the beginning is that that's just a vehicle. They're going to destroy things, and that's going to make way for us to create very new structures. And so after the circus leaves, we're not going to go back to the okie doke. We're not going to go back to the two-party system. We're not going to go back to the Constitution. We're not going to go back to Congress and the judicial system that we currently have. A lot of things have been broken, right, or destroyed. And the checks and balances, the Congress, the executive branch, the judicial system, the government agencies, the media, right? A lot of things have been broken. And they were broken because we're going to have to completely restructure them. So that means we're not going to be reforming things. We're not going to have somebody, a blue hat who gets into office, comes in and says, oh, let me try to fix all of the damage that, the clown did. Let me try to, bring these government agencies back to life. Let's try to, no, we're past that point. We're past that point. We're at a point where so much has been destroyed that we can't go back to the way things were. And the reality is things were already broken before the circus came to town. And it was because things were already broken that he was able to even come to town, right? Like the fact that our ticket voting system, ticket tallying system was not secure, right? That was something that many people have warned about for a long time. And this was not the first contest that was finagled. So according to my guides, 2016 was the first one that was finagled, and that's how Head Clown got in the first time. He didn't get in because of tickets. He got in because of finagling. And that's why he was so upset in 2020, because they finagled again, except it didn't work in 2020 because they just couldn't finagle enough to deal with the incredible popularity of Biden. And then in 2024, they were able to bring in some high tech, right, to solve that problem. They were like, oh, we don't want to deal with the popularity of Lotus Queen. She was even more popular than Biden. And so if they had used their old techniques, it wouldn't have been enough. So that's why they had to bring Starboy in and just flip things. They had to literally go in and flip tallies. So this has been an ongoing problem for a long time. This problem didn't happen in 2024. We had a problem with security of contests that goes back to at least 2016. So what does that tell us? That system is broken and needs to be completely restructured, right? We're also seeing that with the executive branch. It was set up in such a way where we thought we could count on the decency of the person in office. But now we have somebody in office who's not at all decent, right? Who has no moral compass. And so it turns out we don't really have a lot of things in place to keep that person on a lawful path, right? So we have someone who's now very corrupt, who's breaking the law, who's using the office to enrich himself and his family and to bully other countries. And we have nothing in place to stop him. That was always the case. We never had anything in place to stop this from happening. It's just that nobody ever was paying attention, or not enough of us were ever paying attention to that. Same with the Congress, right? It didn't just become corrupt overnight. There's been a problem for years, especially after Citizens United, where corporations have power, have status as persons, and where what's the word? I'm trying to avoid certain words. Contest donations, right, are there's no regulation of that. So you have the people who are getting into office for many years now were not the people who were the most popular. They were the people with the most money. because we don't have finance reform for the contests, right? Even though people have been pushing for that for years. Same with the judicial system. What the circus was able to do was to devote a lot of energy in the first administration to removing and replacing judges all over the place in order to set things up to prevent justice, right? That was also a major flaw in our system, that a head clown who was lawless could have so much power to change the judicial system, right? So we have a lot of problems that need fixing, and they really can't be fixed at this point. It's like unfixable. It has to be replaced. So this is where we're at. We're at a point where we have to come up with an entirely new structure. So this is an answer to the question, when are we going to have, new structures for healthcare and this and that? Well, soon, because this guy's not going to be in there much longer. And when he goes, the problem is, because this is a lawless band of thieves, they don't believe in succession. They don't believe in rule of law. So they're not going to be like, oh, head clown is feeling poorly, or head clown is under investigation. Let's just move to the next guy, right? Couchman, eyeliner. No, they have their own ideas. They're like, oh, we want to install Miller, or we want to install this person. Like, they have their own ideas about, we're just going to do what we want to do. And we're not going to follow any laws. We're just going to do what we want to do. That's just how they brought in Starboy. Starboy was never elected. He was never legally put into position. He wasn't supposed to ever have access to government accounts, government buildings, right? That was all illegal. But they don't believe in the law, right? So this is all going to fall down because there is only so far people will be pushed when it comes to lawlessness of their government. And so there's going to be a major restructuring. Unfortunately, we decided to do everything the hard way. There was a much easier way, right? We had Obama back in the day, who wanted to have major healthcare reform. They put block after block after block in front of him, so that the healthcare reform we did get was corporate run. Pharmaceuticals are running amok. He wanted them to, control that more. So did Hillary, right? Like, there were people, and then the people like Bernie, who actually had the best plan, right? He was like, get corporations out of healthcare altogether, get control pharmaceutical prices, right? He had a plan, right? Well, that would have been the easy way, right? We decided not to take the easy way. So we opted for the hard way. And the hard way was bring the circus to town, destroy our institutions, have them commit all kinds of human rights abuses, to the point where the people get so outraged that we rise up and demand the creation of a new structure, right? That's the hard way. That's the way, but that's the path we're on. That's the path we're on. So, in answer to your question, all of those systems are going to be replaced. And I think you asked when, and I don't know exactly when, but I was told that by 2030, what was I told about 2030? By 2030, everything was going to be completely restructured, right? By 20, like, I was shown a vision of 2030 where, like, all of these things were in place, like, free healthcare and, a living, like, guaranteed income. I was seeing all of these things happening by 2030. But it's kind of a rough road to get there. So we just need to be aware of that. It's not going to happen magically. There's not going to be some savior that shows up and fixes things. We all have to go through it. We all have to be a part of the solution. We all have to be the ones who stand up and speak out and vision. We are all the ones that have to come up with a vision for the future. And then we have to unify and bring that vision about. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't willing to be uncomfortable. And this is something that I keep getting, that a lot of people don't want to be uncomfortable. And I'm one of them. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. I don't like being uncomfortable either. And so we tend to do things, um, you know, only when things become so uncomfortable, right? That we feel like, okay, we got to do something. But if we're not uncomfortable, a lot of us don't want to make ourselves uncomfortable to make change. And that's why we're in this situation now. It's like things have to get uncomfortable enough for enough people to say, okay, I'm willing to be a part of the change. I'm not going to just sit back on watching my TV or scrolling on my phone waiting for a leader to save us. I'm going to be personally involved in the change. And some of that work is going to be uncomfortable, right? We're going to have to give up certain things. We have to sacrifice certain things. We're going to have to go without certain things. We're going to have to change some priorities, right? And that's not easy. It's not easy. What I've never seen is, I just want to reiterate this, what I've never seen is like violets being thrown in an evolution with an R in the way that we've seen them in history. Do you know what I'm saying? Revolving. I have not seen like blood in the streets throughout the country, up in arms, that kind of thing. I haven't seen that. It's not that kind of party, but it is similar in that the people do rise up. The people rise up. I've seen the people rising up and speaking out, coming together in community, creating a vision, demanding things. That is going to happen. And that is a disruption to people's lives. It is uncomfortable, right? It means that you can't just go to work, come home, and relax all night. You might have to go to work, come home, and then get organized and go out into the street, or get organized and invite people over for your meeting, or get organized and, make signs, or right? Like, it means that you have to disrupt your life and get out of your comfort zone to change things. And the question is, how many of us are ready to do that? When enough of us are ready to do that, then it happens. It happens very quickly once enough of us are ready to do that. As a country, and for those who are watching from other countries, you may not know this about us. Maybe you know it. You probably know more than we do about ourselves. But whenever I've traveled, most people I meet in other countries know more about this country than we know about their country. But as a country, we don't really know anything about war, right? We don't know what it's like to have kabooms dropped on us, right? Rufus Wainwright, who I really love, is a singer, musician, who he wrote a song about this. What was that song called? Where he was saying he wanted to go home. He's German. He's like, I want to go home to a country that understands what it's like to have lost everything and had to rebuild. Like the U.S. doesn't get that. And so when we had our incident, right, in 9/11, we were devastated. We were devastated because we didn't know what that was like. We didn't know what it was like. And that's important for this current moment, because we're not really willing, we don't have that same history. Yeah, we had a civil war, right? A long time ago. But we're really not, we don't really have that, I don't know, what's the right word? Constitution. I'm talking about physical constitution. Like, we don't have the mental constitution, the physical constitution for that type of thing. And we're also just not divided enough for something like that. there's not clear two sides. The circus is a very small, the people that support the circus is a very small minority. Um, and then we have a group of people I call the apathetics, who just like don't have views and just sit on the couch and don't really want to be involved. And then you have this group that's really the majority right now, which is part of the persistence, either in thought or deed, right? And so we don't have like these two sides that hate each other that would be willing to go to fisticuffs against each other. So we don't have that type of situation. We also just don't have that kind of constitution as a country, that kind of mental constitution. And what that means, we've just been too comfortable for too long, right? We've just had it too good for too long. We haven't had to worry about our boundaries being invaded. We haven't had to worry about incursions. We haven't had to worry about people dropping things on us. We haven't even had to even think about it, right? And so there's a certain mindset that Americans have that does not predispose us to wanting to get involved in actual conflict on our land, right? And this is a good thing. Some people think it's not a good thing because they think it's going to keep us from rising up, right? Because we're so afraid of actually getting into that type of a conflict. But I don't think so. I think it's a good thing because I think we're going to use our ingenuity, which is a direct result of the fact that we are a country of immigrants. We're going to use that kind of unique way of looking at things to find a different way. That's my vision anyway. I could be wrong, but that's my vision, that we are going to rise up and we are going to come together, but it's not going to be in the way that we did, say, in the Civil War, or it's not going to be in the ways in which some other conflicts have gone down that we've been a part of, that we're currently a part of even. We can see now, the citizens in the United States, nobody supports the Persian War. Even when the day that it started, very few people supported it from the very beginning. The majority of the people in this country, regardless of the color of their hat, do not support It's Not Real right now. Do not support anything that's going on over there. So we're shifting. We're shifting away from, like, we used to be just kind of hypocritical, like, oh, we just want to, rah, rah, war in other countries, but not here, right? Right. But we're shifting toward a more peaceful majority of people who just don't believe in that anymore, who are just like, we don't want to be involved in these conflicts in other countries. We're not interested anymore in trying to take over other places so we can steal their resources, right? We've shifted, right? We're shifting away from that mentality, that colonialist mentality. And that's because we're evolving. And so that means that when we do rise up to create something new in the wake of this disaster, the circus, we're going to do it in a way that's more peaceful than we've done things in the past. We haven't been I hope people don't misunderstand me. We have not been a peaceful country in the past. I'm not saying that. And I did not mean to imply that we were a peaceful country. We're not. We were built on genocide of the indigenous people. And then we were built on enslavement of millions of people from Africa, and the indentured servitude and internment of the Japanese and the oppression of the Chinese to build the railroads, right? So this is a country that's been built on violence. So when I was saying that we're not really prone to like civil war, I didn't mean to imply that we don't have a long, long history of violence. We do. But I think we're shifting. I think we're shifting our consciousness. And this is why the circus came to town, because there are certain people who are really angry that so many people were starting to talk about history, starting to talk about, well, what really happened? What did we really do to all these people? What did we actually, why did we steal all this land from the indigenous people? Why did we kidnap and enslave all of these Africans, right? Like, that conversation was happening. And as a result of that, the Magatonians were like, oh no, we can't have that conversation. We don't want to be held accountable. We don't want to talk about those things. We don't want to we don't want to consider equality. We don't, right? Same with women, right? Women are rising up and talking about patriarchy and talking about we're fed up. We're fed up. We're not going to keep getting married to these men. We're not going to keep having their children. And so the circus was like, oh, we have to interrupt that. We got to interrupt that. We can't have women rising up and, becoming agents of their own life. So that's my long answer to the future restructure. Oh, little people. Yes. Still no little people. So someone asked a question about little people. Was it you? I gave a really long answer to the last question about when are we going to have a restructuring of things like healthcare and et cetera. So yeah, I have an experience with little people. So little people, sometimes some people, it's similar to what some people call fairies or gnomes. There's other names for them, right? But like in the Seminole tribe, my tribe, they're called little people. I think the Cherokee call them little people. And in Ireland, I think they call them fairies. And in Norway, I think they call them gnomes. I'm not sure. But basically, there are beings who really belong to a different kind of line of incarnation. Is that the right word? Like energetically, they're on a different plane. And so they coexist with us, but they don't exist in the same way we do. Like they're not 3D the way we are. They're at a different like frequency or phase. So that's why everyone can't see them. Because little people, only some people can see them. Because if you're a medium or a psychic, you might be able to see into other realms. And they exist in another realm. But it's very close to ours. And so, like when I was a kid, I used to see little people in the forest. And I used to make little villages and leave little gifts for them and stuff. And even now to this day, I do leave gifts, for fairy people or little people when I'm in the woods. And so, yeah, there are different traditions around the world where people believe in little people and, may have a relationship with them, but everyone can't see them. Some people think that children are more prone to see them because when you're a child, you're closer to the other world, the other realm, because you haven't been here that long in the physical. And so you can still connect. A lot of children are quite psychic. And a lot of children, their imaginary friends are actually, fairies or people. Sometimes dead people, sometimes guides, sometimes fairies that are there. It's just that the adults can't see them. But little people, and there's different theories, and depending on what culture you're in, there are different theories about little people. Some people say they're mischievous, that they, steal things, or that they try to trick humans. Some people say that they bring us good luck. Like in Ireland, they have that whole thing with the pot of gold and the, what are they? Are those elves? So there's like an association with them in abundance. And there's also, like if you look at the Theosophists, which their work comes from India, from ancient Vedic texts, they talk about beings in different realms, and they call it the Deva line. So they'll call these beings, whether it's angels or water sprites or animal spirits or fairies, they will say that these are all beings from the Deva line of beings. They follow a different incarnation path than humans, and they don't incur karma. They don't, it's just different from humans in terms of our kind of cycle of life and rebirth. As humans, we tend to come here with a purpose. We sometimes come with soul contracts, with karma we're trying to balance out. There's different reasons why we choose to come here. Whereas my understanding of deva beings, which includes fairies and little people and angels, is that they come to be of service. And they also work in groups. So there's more of like a group consciousness versus our individual consciousness. We have these kind of discrete individual souls that incarnate into discrete bodies. My understanding is that that's not the case with these other types of beings, that they're more, like animals. Animals have more of a group consciousness. Now, it's also possible for an animal to develop a very individual consciousness, and this happens with pets or with, domesticated animals. And that's because being around us, we happen to be constituted that way as individual souls, right, in individual bodies with an individual purpose. And we don't really remember our sense of group consciousness, even though at higher levels, our soul is in a group with other souls and we are a part of a group consciousness. But on Earth, we tend to identify with a discrete soul. Well, what happens with animals is when they spend a lot of time with us, they develop, these kind of personalities, and they start to really operate more as individuals, in large part because we've isolated them from the group, right? There's no herd, there's no group. It's just them and humans. And so they tend to adapt. Our dogs, our cats, our horses, or whatever animals we have that we've kind of isolated from their group and brought into our homes or our farms and kind of developed a relationship with. They can develop these kind of individuated souls by being with us. And it's not better than or worse than a group soul. It's just different. And, what I've been shown, people have different views on this, but I'm just going to talk about what I've been shown. I can only talk about what I know. I have had certain animals in my life that I have seen our past lives together. So I see, since I was little, I was able to see a lot of my past lives. And then as an Akashic Records reader, I'm able to see other people's past lives. And then as a quantum healing hypnosis technique, past life regressionist, I've been able to visit other people's past lives in hypnosis. So that's where all this information is coming from. And so I've seen some of my past lives with animals, and I've had animals that have incarnated with me in more than one lifetime. Not always as the same kind of animal, but we've had very close relationships. And so I know it's possible for a soul to incarnate into a particular animal's body in order to have a kind of individual experience with another soul that's in a human body. And you'll notice, like I had this dog, Blissful. He was a bulldog, and we were friends with all of his doggy relatives. So the breeder I got him from, he was an English bulldog. The breeder I got him from lived down the street. And whenever I was out of the country, he would go stay with his doggy relatives. So he would go stay with his actual biological mother and his uncle, and a bunch of other bulldogs who lived down the street. And so he had relationships with them and they would come to our house, for little play dates. I would invite them over. And it was always striking how differently the doggy relatives acted from my dog. My dog acted like a person. And the doggy relatives would come over and they would act like dogs. They were very much like a group who acted a lot of instinctual behavior. And he would just kind of look at them like, oh, that's interesting. And it was so obvious that he had developed a different way of being, right? His soul was expressing in a very different way. And he also could communicate with me telepathically, using language. Um, and I had past lives with him where in a past life he was my horse. And I also had a past life with him where he was a bunny. And, so there are different kinds of beings in the world, I guess. And so when we talk about little people, it's one type of being, and they can be in a group consciousness, but then they can also sometimes develop these more individuated ways of interacting with individuals. And that's true about animals in general, that you can develop special relationships with animals, which will change kind of the trajectory of their soul. So that's my take on the little people and the larger group of Deva beings. And we're getting pretty close to 2 hours, so I think I'll just take one more question and we'll call it a night. No, that wasn't Ben Riley. So Ben Riley was the bulldog I had most recently, and he passed away. It's the anniversary of his death, the second anniversary of his death in a couple of days. So he was visiting me yesterday. He's been visiting me this week because, it's the anniversary. He was a rescue. Ben Riley was also a bulldog, but he was a rescue. Blissful was not a rescue. He was from a breeder. I got him as a puppy, whereas Ben Riley was a rescue. So I've had 2 bulldogs. They were both very special people. And yeah, Ben Riley just came to visit me this week. That's one of the nice things about being a medium is that, when your relatives die, they can come visit you and you can be aware of it, more aware of it, right? Oh yeah, sprites and brownies. Those are other names for little people. Okay. Oh, are people talking about brownies as in Girl Scouts? Oh, I think brownie is another name for little people. So I'm not sure if you're talking about that or is it different from elementals? I'm not, it is, but I don't think I can really hold forth on that. It's similar, but different. I mean, different traditions use different language, and then there are slightly different kind of categories, right? Oh, here's someone who's very similar to me. Irish, Seminole, Cherokee, and African. I have similar heritage. I have some Cherokee blood as well. Sagali. How little are the little people? I think there's a variety of them, a variety of sizes. Oh yeah, fays. That's another term. Fae, the fae. Oh, Kendra said that she met one who was about the size of a 2-year-old. Like I think gnomes are supposed to be like, yeah, like maybe toddlers. But the ones that I used to see when I was a child were maybe about I don't know, 6 inches. Oh, the islands of Hawaii have little people too. Yeah, they have little people all over the world. Yeah, Lisa said lots of people have little people. The sun is all of a sudden shining right on me. It's hard to see the screen. We're all just waiting for her to see her comments. Why? Because you were talking about little people? Thank you to all the wonderful chatters and moderators. Yeah, thank you to the moderators. I think Oxford Cat is one of them. I always want to thank my moderators, but I never know who they are. And I forgot at the beginning of this session to say, moderators, tell me you're here so I know who's moderating today. But thank you to all my moderators. I have great moderators. That's why we never have trouble. Brownies is a UK term for little people. Oh yeah, pixies. I forgot about that term. Yeah, so someone said brownies are naughty. So I know there are some little people that are known to be naughty, that like they'll mess with, they'll take your things or they'll move your things around. They're kind of mischievous. And sometimes they do it to get your attention or just kind of to make you aware of the other world. Or to kind of, or maybe sometimes to distract you from your problems or get your attention. Yeah, so mostly Nice Cat agrees with me. Being a medium, it does make grief easier when you can talk to your relatives after they pass, or at least be aware of them. Ben Riley. Yeah, Ben Riley. His full name was Beneficent Riley Joy. And Ben, I'm going to talk about him since it's the anniversary of his passing. He was a rescue. He was an informal rescue because I was on a rescue list for bulldogs. So I used to volunteer with the bulldog rescues in Florida when I had Blissful. I didn't know anything about bulldogs when I first got my first bulldog, but my guides came to me and said, "We're going to bring you this dog," and they showed me this picture of a bulldog. And at a certain point, I had a dream about exactly where to get the bulldog, and it was just very magical. Like they said to me, "Oh, when you meet Blissful, you'll know. There'll be signs." And when I met to meet this one bulldog, he was really tiny, and he just started swinging from my braids. And and then he curled up and fell asleep in my lap. And the breeder said, "I've never seen this happen." She said, "I've already sold this bulldog to someone else, but I'm going to call them up right now and tell them they cannot have him because he clearly wants to go home with you." And it's just a magical connection, right? And that was how I got Blissful. But my guides also told me exactly like which breeder, and they really pointed me in the right way. Well, Ben Riley, it was during the pandemic that I was feeling like I was hearing about everybody, adopting dogs. And I was like, oh, I'm finally in a position where I could have a dog. I have a yard. I have, the money for a dog. This is a good time for me to get a dog. And so I signed up for all these rescues. And I was just on lots of rescues, but, there were no dogs because everybody was adopting. And I was waiting for weeks and weeks. And then I got put on this bulldog rescue. And the bulldog rescue took like 6 weeks for you to get vetted. They had to come to your house. You had to fill all these forms. And I got on that rescue because they had a disabled bulldog that was for adoption, but then someone else adopted him. So I was like, oh, well, then I had a student who said to me, "Hey, I know you're looking for a dog. I know a dog that needs to be rescued." And it was a family member that was keeping this dog in the garage in a crate. And I was like, "Oh, absolutely." But first, when I saw the picture of Ben Riley, I was like, "Oh, I don't know," because he looked identical to Blissful, and it kind of freaked me out. It was like, "Oh my God, he looks just like my last dog," which I had 10 years previous. But then I was like, no, it's meant to be. I have to rescue this dog. And when I got him, he was in really bad shape. He couldn't really walk. He couldn't hear. He had a lot of health issues. And but I was able to get him in much better shape, where I got him to the point where he was running and jumping and he could hear, and he had a much better health. And then this was during the pandemic and after the pandemic. And then I was recovering at the time from some rather serious injuries, and so it was just me and him. And so I got him trained as a service dog to help me, and it was just me and him during my long recovery for years. And so we were very close. And he was kind of a grumpy old man, very set in his ways, liked to do what he wanted to do. He was an alpha male. So when we hung out with other dogs, he had to make sure everyone understood that he was the boss, which was kind of funny because he was a very, very sedate dog who never barked and was just very mellow among humans. But when he got around dogs, he was like, everyone understand I'm in charge, right? And then once everyone was clear, he was back to his mellow self. So he had some really interesting personality traits. And he was a protector. He protected me. He saved my life one time. And he was also really funny. He was, he just had this way of cracking me up with his little antics and whatnot. And so yeah, that's been Riley, Beneficent Riley Joy. He passed away July 1st, 2 years ago, and he's doing fine on the other side. They always do well on the other side. We just miss them, right? So I just described your dog, someone said. Rhonda said, oh, you just described my dog. Yeah. Ben Riley was a character. He was a great character. He loved to play. He loved to go to the beach. That was his favorite thing. And he loved to steal other dogs' balls. He didn't like his own balls. He would just like to steal other dogs' balls and then bring the ball back to his blanket and be all proud of himself. Like, look what I did. And it was hilarious because he's a bulldog. They're short. They're slow. They're not tough. They can't really win. They don't tend to win fights. They don't have big teeth. And these dogs that were always faster than him, he was always playing with Labradors. They would always think, oh, he's never going to get the ball from me because he can't even run as fast as I can. They would just take off and he would just be plodding along all slow. But he would outsmart them every time. They would drop the ball, like to give back to their owner, whatever. And he would just watch them like a hawk and wait for that moment when he could quickly grab the ball. And he would get it every time. Very, very smart dogs, bulldogs, very smart, but underestimated because of the way they walk around all slow and Was he a white and tan? He was. I think they call it red and white. They called him a red and white, I believe. There's two colors that are very similar. One is called, is it white and tan? And one's called red and white. It's funny because I forget, because Blissful was one color and they called Ben Riley by the other color. But from my perspective, they were the same. But I think the difference is that if they have a little bit of black, then is that it? They call it white and red versus white and tan. I don't know. But yeah, he was basically white and tan. Yeah, bulldogs are very, very sweet. They're very loyal. Yeah, he was kind of a sorcerer. He always got their balls. We'd go to the beach. There'd be these Labradors. They would be running. The owners kept throwing the ball. They'd be running, and then they'd come back. And he couldn't even chase them because he was too slow. And but he would steal their ball every single time. So I actually would carry around a Chucket because that was everyone's kind of favorite dog with their Labradors. I would carry around a Chucket, and then after he stole the ball, I would say to the other owner, "Hey, can your dog play with his Chucket until I get it out of his mouth?" Because he wanted to very proudly saunter back to the blanket with the ball that he had stolen. And I wanted to give him that chance to saunter because it was so cute. Oh, here's someone talking about the Hawaiian little people. The Hawaiian little people are the Menehune. In an episode of History on Earth here on YouTube, they visited with a lady shaman by the name of Sabra. I had the good fortune to meet her in 2023. That's great. What's he doing on the other side? He's at the beach. They go to they do their favorite things. Blissful, when I saw him on the other side after he passed, he was always in a field of flowers because he loved flowers and butterflies, and he taught me how to meditate, and he used to always want to sit. I used to buy him flowers and just put them in a vase on the floor for him because he loved flowers. So they usually go to their favorite place on the other side. They do their favorite things. But he stayed around. He stayed around for 3 months. For 3 months, he stayed in my apartment, um, you know, comforting me while I got adjusted to him being gone. And then after 3 months of him in my apartment, he moved to my dream world and stayed for like another month, and then he left. So they'll do that. They'll stick around you. They'll come into your dreams. And they'll visit you. Someone asked here, is it true that bulldogs have a lot of flatulence? They have a lot of food. They're very particular about food. And so if you don't feed them the right foods, they'll have flatulence. Neither of my dogs had flatulence because I was very careful about what I fed them. Also, you could feed them yogurt to make sure they don't have gas. So Blissful, I always fed yogurt too. And then Ben Riley, he didn't like yogurt, but I had him on a really strict diet of only certain foods. But if he ate something he wasn't supposed to, yeah. If someone gave him something, like if he was at his cousin's house eating one of her milk bones, which he wasn't supposed to eat, he would have that. All right. Well, it's 2:00, so I will think. I think there's probably time to. Oh, here's my last question from Blonde Rebel Healer. Do humans stay in the house after transitioning? Some do. Some do stick around to try to comfort their relatives. Some people stick around as earthbound spirits, meaning they can't quite let go and they want to just stay here because they're too attached to something in the physical. But most spirits are only going to stay around long enough till they feel that people have grieved enough, or maybe they just want to make sure that their affairs are in order, and then they leave. But Ben Riley was sticking around for me because I was very grief-stricken when he passed. And so he was just sticking around to comfort me. And so humans will do that too. They'll sometimes stick around to comfort their loved ones. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will see you at the next live. And thanks for being here. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for the community. Thanks to all the mods. And thank you to people who bought me coffee or gave me gifts or bought my book. I appreciate all of you. So take care.